Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you in part by Mays Sandwich Shop, serving delicious hometown favorites to the West Lawn community since 1947. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, bringing you the latest news and commentary on baseball.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out! The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball!
Hockey.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup! The Flyers win the Stanley Cup!
College football.
The Big Ten championship lies on a measurement.
Did he get it? No! He didn't get it! Penn State holds!
They brought back the fun, they brought back the excitement, and now they've brought back a Big Ten championship. The Penn State Nittany Lions are Big Ten champions.
And the NFL.
He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth! What a comeback!
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 238 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me, my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be back. You know, I know we had a little bit of a break there for the show, but I had missed a little bit before that. Had to email in my picks. So I'm glad to be back and be able to start talking football. Last night, and this may resonate more with you, but last night I saw we were at a party for my father-in-law, and Mrs. B was there, and Mrs. B said to me, "I'm ready for football."
Oh,
okay.
whoa.
That tells you
that the
two
Phillies
things.
are bad.
One, it's time for football, and two, the Phillies must be really bad.
Really bad, yeah. The Phillies are really bad. They won today. 1 out of 10, right? That's what we're
They
I'm
should have
thinking
won
now.
last night.
Yeah. And actually, I heard someone discussing at one of 3 parties we were at this weekend, all for children 9 or under.
This is our lives.
This
now.
is our lives now. But the party I was at last night, I heard someone talking about up to this point where I think the Phillies have played about 90 games so far. Around that.
Yeah.
They've been in, I think it was 28 one-run games.
I don't like where this is
And if you win just half of them, as of last night, they would be just 8 games back of first.
Wow.
But obviously they didn't.
No,
they didn't win that many. So they're not getting a great bullpen or closing situations. They're not getting clutch hitting, and the hitting is massively inconsistent. I mean, you could say that about the pitching technically too, but I think the inconsistent offense and then the bad bullpen closing situation.
Right.
Not that the starting pitching has been lighting it on fire.
The rest of the season, though, shouldn't even focus on winning games. I know that sounds ridiculous at professional sports. It should be get these young guys on track. Some of them have been up and down. Some of them have just been down. Figure out what we've got with the young guys, because it's time to start moving forward next year. Next year, we need to start making steps in the right direction, because I was hoping that we would make a step in the right direction this year. That clearly did not happen, so hopefully this is the reset year, you know what I mean, and we can start building from here, because it's not good.
Yeah, we will see what ends up happening with the Phillies here in the long term, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We will eventually, I think, if we can squeeze it in, recap our baseball picks, maybe. Just because, honestly, the fall is so busy with us recapping the NFL season on this show and then also squeezing in Bulldog Hour episodes. It's tough for us to, take accountability for what we predicted in Major League Baseball, especially when the Phillies aren't going to be as good as we expected.
Right.
That kind of tempers our willingness or excitedness to talk baseball and recap what's going on.
Well, and to be fair, when Mrs. B has moved on to baseball or to football season, I don't know who is out there wants to hear us talk Phillies at that point.
Really,
You know what I
you're
mean?
right.
Like,
You're right. Yeah.
Because she's the one who, like, Super Bowl Sunday would be okay with us talking Phillies. You know, like,
Oh, yeah.
there may not be a more diehard Phillies fan. Not that, but, like, I don't want to say it's all relative compared to the other sports. You know what I mean? Like, when
Right.
I think of rooting for other sports, I don't really, she doesn't come to mind. But when it comes to baseball, absolutely up near the top of the list. you
Oh,
know,
yeah,
so
for sure.
it kind of just gives you an idea of where the Phillies are and where the fan base is. So,
Well, where we are is in our 2017 NFL preview,
yes.
and we're up to our 4th division, which means we will be, at the end of the show, halfway through our pro football preview for this upcoming season, rapidly approaching. Actually, in 3 weeks, we have our fantasy draft. Crazy to think about. And
I selected my keepers today.
Oh, nice. Who'd you go with?
I went with Des Bryant and Melvin Gordon.
Who are you having a tough time? No.
Only in whether I should trade somebody
okay.
or to try and get an out of their actual keeper. Like,
All right, so you weren't 100% sure you liked Gordon and Bryant.
I like them. I don't know that
You thought
they're
you could
great
possibly
keepers,
do better.
but it's all relative. Again, my roster, that's who I'm keeping.
It's
there was another
interesting.
wide receiver that I thought of, but like ranking-wise, he's down there, but I like him, so I don't know.
It's interesting that one of your two is a receiver, because I was just talking about our fantasy league with Adam 2 days ago at one of the birthday parties, and he's keeping 2 receivers.
Yeah.
And I told him I'm keeping 2 receivers.
Just to clarify for those that don't know, like it's not a PPR league.
No, it's not.
So it is one of those things where it's not PPR, but it reflects the league. Everybody gets back there and passes a ton.
Right, that's the state of things now, and there's been running backs by committee, and
was
backs
really
don't have
interesting.
great years back to back.
So again, I know I've talked to you a bunch about this, about baseball specifically, like the Baseball Tonight podcast with Buster Olney. I don't know if you've heard any of the Know Them from Adam. That
I've heard of it, but I haven't actually.
So, what's his name? Adam Schefter from ESPN. He does a podcast,
Yep.
and he had D'Angelo Williams on, and it was just really interesting. And they were just talking. And D'Angelo Williams is like straightforward. He's like, I'm a running back, so obviously, like I feel differently about it. But I think there were 17 kickers and punters that are making more than like quote unquote the average running back. Like, it's hard for a running back to get $3 million a year right now. Basically, there are a couple that do, but even there, like I think Adrian Peterson's on a $3.5 million per year for 2 years. Right. So now again, there are stipulations with that. Adrian Peterson has been off the field, all this stuff, but like there are quote unquote big name running backs that aren't getting big money. And punters and kickers, there are 17 of them that are making more than $3 million a year. Like it's just the devalue of the running back position, and they talked about that a little bit. But it was just really interesting what they were talking about in with regards to that. So I've found myself more and more really liking the podcasts of ESPN.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they also have started the 30 for 30 podcasts, which I haven't really gotten into yet, but I'm excited about that. And I've heard good things because 30 for 30 is one of my favorite things that ESPN does. And
is there anything else?
podcast,
Is there another option out there?
Well, college football. I like
well,
watching college
okay, yeah,
football. I know. But yeah. So that being said, that's kind of where I'm at. So
yeah. So well, hey, it is what it is. I do like that 30 for 30 stuff is pretty good. So
right, yeah.
So let's jump into our AFC South preview. That's where we're at. We started with NFC West, did the AFC West, then I did the NFC South by myself and got your email. We were close to agreement. We just flip-flopped 1 and 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, and honestly, it surprises me in the moment, but after hearing you talk about it, probably at one of the little kid birthday parties, we were talking about it. Yeah, because you were talking about how one of your keepers
is Mike
related
Evans.
to the offense. Yeah, so and I wanted to, I just didn't have the guts to pull the trigger on it.
And I
Like,
pretty much
that's
said
what
it.
was.
No, I didn't call you. I didn't say like you didn't have guts.
But you knew me well enough to know
I bet Justin
what was going on.
is contemplating switching these,
Yeah.
but he just couldn't do it. That was actually the first one of any of us to change up the playoff team from last year. Now, I did say I thought the Falcons would be a wild card, so I'm only
Okay.
kind of,
Right.
dropping them down a notch, whether they won a division last year.
Well, and part of it was Tampa Bay, I thought was going to make a bigger jump last year than they did.
They made
but
a huge jump last year.
I know, but I thought they were going to contend last year, and
They were 9-7,
almost did.
yeah.
They almost did. So I feel like this is a huge year for them.
I definitely do. I definitely think it's a big year.
Yeah, and I think they're going to continue in the right direction. I just don't know that they have enough to catch the Falcons. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Falcons, though, because, I don't know, Super Bowl hangover lost the brain of the offense, in a way. Will Matt Ryan regress? Because we've seen him peak pretty high before, and then regression. So is he going to continue to get higher, or what's going to happen? So just interested to see. So
yeah. So are the Buccaneers, a team that a lot of people are high on, guilty? A team last year that everyone was high on, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
yeah.
So are the Buccaneers going to be the Jaguars in 2017, which would be bad for me because that just means I don't see them going 3-13, but that just means they're not going to fulfill offseason expectations. I think there's two teams that have big offseason expectations. One of them did make the playoffs, the Bucs, who I expect to make the playoffs, and a lot of people are pretty high on them. The other is the Raiders, who faded at the end of last year, still made the playoffs, but a lot are really high on them.
Got to pass a little bit because of the quarterback situation. Top two quarterbacks got knocked out. I think the Raiders are going to continue, but you're right. It wouldn't really surprise me, because I made that pick, and then you ran through all the close games they had, and I was like, oh gosh, Joey's right. But I think the Raiders continue to build in the right direction. But like you said, leading into the AFC South, that brings us to a number of teams here. I don't know exactly where you want to start. Do you want to start with Jacksonville?
Yeah, well,
they were the bottom last year. I think.
I guess I bring them up just because I feel like that's why I thought we were going to go with them this year. Now, I know we do these separately, but looking at the other teams, I feel like as high as I was hoping they would do last year, as high as on them as I was, obviously they weren't ready. And I don't know if any of the changes they've done will get them any more ready.
Right, but part of me is I don't know that they need that many more parts. I feel like it was production. I feel like it's production. And that becomes can these guys ever reach that level of production? Basically, was it the coaching? Or is it the guys? I don't know. Let's put it this way. Where do you put Blake Bortles? Is Blake Bortles going to carry this team to 7 wins this year?
Yeah, I mean, going into last year, people were super high on Bortles, actually, to the point where my dad and Todd were actually thinking of keeping Bortles and letting Rodgers go.
I think they did let Rodgers go.
They
but
did,
I don't think they kept
they
Bortles.
didn't keep
right,
Bortles. Yeah. Now, the thing that we always kind of look at, it would go back over their schedule. They started 0-3, 1-2, and then they lost, 9 in a row? Something like that?
Yeah. Well, and the owner really started mishandling the coaching stuff there. Either fire a guy or don't, but don't fire him and then have him fly back with the team.
Right.
That's just a joke. And I know the owner wants it to be a big show kind of stuff, but sometimes the owners can't get out of their own way.
And, they missed the playoffs for the 9th straight year. They, like Justin just said, they fired Gus Bradley towards the end of the season. And the thing that I want to point out, though, is while they were 3-13, they lost 8 games by a touchdown or less.
Right. So it's there. They drafted a big running back, didn't they?
Yeah, they drafted the guy from LSU.
Yeah, Fournette.
Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, so I feel like that could really help. I think they make a jump. The problem is their jump going to be high enough? I know it's a new coach again this year, right?
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
they got rid of Gus Bradley and they brought in Doug Marrone.
Who had success in Buffalo as the interim, right?
Yeah.
And
no, he was the head coach.
He was the head coach,
at
but
Buffalo.
then
he was basically like, this isn't for me.
Right.
And bounced.
And that's really weird. So it's a weird situation because I want to like the Buffalo Bills ownership, because it's the Pagulas who are big Penn State supporters, and Penn State hockey specifically.
Right. Yeah, I know that's
so. I want I want to like them, but sometimes I look at some of the stuff that happens in Buffalo, and I'm like, ugh, that's
I know.
another one I can't really get out of the way.
Board.
But that being said, I think they do make a step up. Like I said, I think the pieces are there for them to be good. I think they just need production, and it wasn't working under Gus Bradley, but you know what? I think Marrone has proven that he can do it as a head coach in terms of taking a team that was underachieving and start to move in the right direction. And that's what he needs to do here. They don't need to make the playoffs this year. They need to move in the right direction. If they can get the 6 to 7 wins, I think that's a plus. I think they get to 7 wins.
You think they get the 7 wins?
I
That's
do.
a pretty good jump for them. Well, we've seen it with first-year guys, and we talk about it all the time. First-year head coaches, you have a different atmosphere.
They had a first-round pick last year that didn't play, correct? Or was that the year before and he was back last year?
Yeah, that was Dante Fowler.
Okay, so
Miles Jack, he dropped him the second they got him, and they had Jalen Ramsey, who looks incredible. He had a great year last year. They've lost, they lost some people in free agency, but again, on a 3-13 team, how much are they really losing? They lost one of their first-round picks to the Steelers. I mean, a previous first-round pick signed with the Steelers in free agency, and Tyson Alualu. Prince Amukamara, who's been a veteran defensive back.
So he's one that I wanted the Eagles to get. I wanted the Eagles to get him, and I'm glad they didn't. He has not really panned out. Going on to his third team already, I think.
Jonathan Cyprien, who's their starter at safety for a while, he signed with the rival Titans. They lost our boy Jordan Hill, former Penn Stater and Lebden star, to the Detroit Lions. And Luke Jokel, who's a number 1 overall pick, supposed to be a guy at lockdown at tackle, never panned out. He moved to guard and then signed with the Seahawks. And then we know that Julius Thomas ended up in Miami.
Cashed in.
But nice thing about that is he reunites with Adam Gase, who had huge years with him in Denver. So I'm still hopeful of that. I know he didn't quite work out in Jacksonville. He had some production when healthy.
You don't need him to be what he was in Denver. You just need him to be more than he was in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Right? And let's be honest. Like, I like Blake Bortles, but Ryan Tannehill has shown more than Blake Bortles has.
Yeah.
Right? So, and under Adam Gase, you hope that that's the right connection there, like you said. So,
and we were remiss to not mention friend of the show, Chad Henne, re-signed with the Jaguars. So he is back in Jacksonville.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. I hope he finishes out this 2-year contract and gets another one. If you're having
keep it going,
a good time doing it, why not? And he has proven that he can be a capable starter in this league and is a great backup, which is why I think the Jaguars keep hanging on to him.
And it says a lot to me that they hired the guy who was the offensive coordinator last year to be the coach. That guy who is the head coach, not necessarily calling all the shots, but that guy who is calling the shots, at least on the field, thinks it's worth keeping him around as the backup quarterback. Like that. Yeah. That speaks to what it is in that system anyway. So that's good.
Now the Jaguars did make a few off-season free agent acquisitions, some splashes of their own, bringing in Brandon Albert from the Dolphins. It was supposed to be, I think, a trade with Julius Thomas, and then they ended up both, I think, releasing it. It was a weird situation going on in March. But the biggest one was A.J. Bowie from Houston. He was the Texans' number 1 cornerback, and now he's in Jacksonville. Calais Campbell was thought to be a lifelong Cardinals player, comes back to Florida where he played college ball. I believe it. Was he Florida State or was he Miami?
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember now, and of course I'm not going to remember. Well, he played in the state of Florida, his college football. Big get for the Jaguars there. Barry Church from the Cowboys, on a much maligned Cowboys secondary, still a reputable starter there in the defensive backfield. And then Earl Watford, another Cardinals player, comes over to shore up the offensive line. So Jacksonville made some nice free agent signings. Will it pay off? Well, you already heard Justin say in the draft they had Leonard Fournette, 4th overall. He's supposed to be a game changer and come in and start from day 1. Then they continue to overhaul the offensive line by bringing in Cam Robinson, thought to be a first-round pick from Alabama. Yeah. They got him in the second.
If that pans out, that could be a huge pick, not just for them, but not just because they got him in the second round, but because if he's healthy, a lot of people picked him as like a top 5 talent.
Right.
Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but they may have gotten a steal there. They may have gotten a bust there. It's hard to say, but
same thing goes with
in the second round. to possibly get a top 5 talent is incredible.
Yeah, and it's the second straight year they've done that.
Yeah.
With Miles Jack the year before. In the 4th round, they took D.D. Westbrook, who's a very, very productive receiver at Oklahoma. Some injury stuff and questions about his translation to the NFL surrounded him, but he was very productive. So if they can get anything out of him, that's a boon for him. We were hoping to see Allen Robinson bounce back after a down year last year, but again, is that more teams adjusting to him having a bad year, or Bortles?
I think it's all of it. I think it was all of it, a little bit of each. Adding Fournette, I think, actually helps more than adding Westbrook in that case. But, I think if you get more production at the other places and more time, you're going to see Allen Robinson's numbers jump up again.
Yeah. So we talked about Doug Marrone being the head coach, the offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, D coordinator, Todd Wash. The interesting thing to me is looking over the other coaches and seeing some former NFL players now really jumping up in plenty of the other spots. Just in Jacksonville, Tyrone Wheatley is the running back coach,
Keenan
and
McCardell.
Keenan McCardell is the wide receivers coach. And we saw it on some other teams that we've been looking over, and I'm like, wow, look at all the former NFL players now. Some of them stars in their own right. Some of them stars just by names from college. Like Wheatley was more of a college guy than a pro guy. But McCardell is a Jacksonville legend. So having him on the staff is an interesting tie. And we're seeing that kind of propagate throughout the NFL. Some players that we watched growing up are now becoming, they've broken ranks. They've done their duty in high school, low college, high college, or at a low-level NFL, in a spot that barely gets mentioned on roster or on coaching staff pages. Now they're getting bumped up and are the head positional coaches or coordinators. So it's an interesting thing to see that I just wanted to point out. So you think they jumped to 7? That's a 4-win improvement, 3-13. So 7-9 for Jacksonville. I assume you don't have them in last then.
I'm gonna have them tied for last.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that the numbers will shake out.
But
I have them tied for last.
I think it's more of to say how improved are they going to be, how competitive they're going to be, how are they compared to other teams.
Yeah,
we kind of throw out numbers just to kind of have a numerical meaning to our expectations.
Yeah, like how much better or worse do I have this team than last year and compared to the other teams?
So from 3-13 to 7-9 from you, I'll say from 3-13 to 6-10. I do think I agree, like going over the schedule and seeing 8 losses by 7 or less, and there was like 4 by 4 or less. They were in games, and if you have better quarterback play, you might win 3 or 4 of those, and that puts you 6 to 7 wins. So I think 6-10, but I do think that's last place in the AFC South, which is where they were last year. Now, third place last year was Indianapolis at 8-8. Is Indy the team you have them tied with?
I do.
Okay.
I have them at 7-9.
So you have Indy dropping back another one to 7-9.
I like Andrew Luck a lot. I just don't. I'll be honest. Like Ryan Grigson has made some moves that you're like, okay, and a lot of moves that make you scratch your head.
And that's why he's gone.
Right. And they're left with that mess. And I just don't know that they have what it takes to make a big step up. And I think the other teams in this division are stepping up. So while I think the offense will be dynamic at times, I don't think they've done enough the other places to really step up in comparison to the other teams.
Right.
Like, honestly, of the teams in the division, now, Houston, it's a little weird because they were at the top of the division. But let's take the other 3 teams. I probably feel like they improved the least out of the 3 teams. Mm-hmm. And I show that I have them dropping a game. I think they're going to be 7-9, right around 500, 7 or 8 wins. But I think they're going to be right there with. I think they're going to be closer to Jacksonville than the other teams in the division. And at times they may have the best offense in the division, but there are going to be weeks, and we see this the last 2 or 3 years. There's going to be weeks where you're like, they're one of the bottom 7 or 8 teams in the league. Like you'll have times where you'll see them as the top 7 or 8 teams, and you'll have games where you see them as the bottom 7 or 8. And that's just not a good place to be because I think that's good. I think when it works out, they're going to be closer to that bottom third of teams than the top half or top third.
I agree with you. I think they're a 7-8 win team. I look at last year. I don't see much improvement this offseason. Right. They were 8-8, so 7 or 8 next year I think makes sense. While they lost, I think 4 games by like 5 or less points, they also won a few games by that many. Right. So I think it's kind of a wash there. But the teams they lost to were probably as good, if not better than them. And then the teams they beat, kind of not the best.
Right.
They beat the Chargers, which they probably should have. They beat the Bears, which they probably should have. They beat the Titans. That's probably a push. They beat the Packers. That's not a game they should have won, but they won. They beat the Titans again, probably a push. Beat the Jets. Should have beat the Jets. Beat the Vikings. I'd say that's probably a push.
And the Vikings at that point, though, had
But
really
they were
bottomed
starting
out.
to trail.
Yeah.
And they beat the Jaguars. Like,
Right.
what win there is you're like, the Colts are a great team.
Yep.
But then who'd they lose to? Lions pushing for the playoffs. Broncos pushing for the playoffs. Jaguars, that's not a good loss.
Right.
Texans in the playoffs. Chiefs in the playoffs. Steelers in the playoffs. Texans in the playoffs. Raiders in the playoffs.
Yeah, so they lost to good
They're
teams.
an average
but,
team. They're an
right.
average team.
They're an average team last year. I think they're close to an average team this year, and I don't think that they got better. Whereas the expectations I have for the Jaguars, I think they underachieved last year and are going to get better.
Right.
I think the Colts are kind of showing us who they are, and I think that's an average football team.
Yeah, unfortunate for them. But in the offseason, they also lost Robert Mathis and Pat McAfee. Usually a punter doesn't come up on the show, but he was one of the better ones. Mike Adams, a veteran safety, gone. He's in Carolina now. What did they add? Not all that much. And once again, people weren't thrilled with their draft. I think they took Malik Hooker.
I like Malik Hooker.
From Ohio
I like
State,
that pick, but
I don't know that anything else really jumped out.
No, not at all.
But they obviously knew they needed help on defense. The first 3 picks were on the defensive side,
Right.
And then they added the 3 at the end,
Right,
on
and that's not
defense
to
as
say
well.
that those guys won't turn out. But all right, so you have 2 rookies at cornerback and safety. Maybe starting in your secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, good luck with that.
Right.
In the NFL now, not that they won't be good, but there's a learning curve there.
Right.
So, I think they're in trouble. So. New GM, new regime. I think they can get it turned around, but I don't think they really realized how good they had it with Polian as their
right.
GM. I don't think they did.
Polian and Son.
Yeah. Who now, by the way, is Chris Polian was on the Jaguars staff.
So does Irsay? Obviously, Ballard will be back next year because this is his first year. I highly doubt you.
Unless they bomb it.
But even then, it's his first year.
Right.
You don't tell a GM. You got to give a GM at least 2 years, if not 3, to get his guys on the roster.
So is Chuck Pagano
That's
gone?
exactly where I was going. If they finish even at 7 or 8 wins, is Pagano back?
Yeah, he's gone, and they're drafting a quarterback. Well, no, they're not drafting a quarterback. They have Angelo. But yeah, they'll go with whoever Luck wants at head coach or something like that. Because if they're there, then
the problem is that Pagano won 11 games the first 3 years, couldn't get over the hump against the Patriots and the Ravens in the playoffs those years, and now has gone 500. If he goes 500 again or
I think
worse,
he's done.
How do you reward? I mean,
especially you change the GM,
right?
So GM, he doesn't have to prove he should keep his job. Let me rephrase that. He doesn't have to worry about making the playoffs as much as proving he's worthy of keeping his job. Does that make sense? They're tied together.
No,
but he needs the onus. The null here isn't him staying. I should say he has to prove that he deserves to stay.
Right.
The status quo is not him staying at this point because they changed the GM. So you have to think the status quo gets him fired. He needs to exceed the status quo, and I don't think they do that this year.
Right.
So and if they get off to a slow start, then it's even more awkward because do they change early?
Right. Absolutely. So we have Jacksonville in last or tied for last, Indianapolis in third or tied for third, however you want to say it. Who's your second place team?
So I actually just switched it right now. My second place team, I'm going with Houston.
So am I. Okay, and I literally sitting here because I didn't do this. I didn't prep for this at all.
I didn't really prep, but I gave it some thought. So
I kind of looked back at last year and was kind of formulating, and then when we sat down to do it, I was like, I'm just going to do this while we're sitting here because it's a lot more fresh. And sometimes that unprepared, unscripted, when you're doing predictions like this, produces some interesting discussion.
Right.
So I actually was thinking the whole time, I'm going Houston 1, but then as I thought about it, I still like Houston.
Oh, I really like Houston, and I'm going to put them at 9 or 10 wins.
Yeah.
And
so
I really like them. And I
It
really
comes
like
down to,
Deshaun Watson.
is Deshaun
Oh my
Watson
gosh.
ready to go?
Right. And I think he'll be good enough. But it goes back to the idea I talked about earlier about how much did teams get better.
Right. I think Tennessee got a
Tennessee,
notch better than Houston
Each
did.
of the last
They
couple years,
tied
they've
last
had
year.
so many, so much talent coming in. Oh man, I think they could really get it going.
Right.
Um,
So
it'll be interesting. I don't know, but oh man, I really think it would be interesting. I think they get it going in the right direction here.
yeah, Houston. They were 9-7 last year. They had no business being on the field with New England in Week 3. We saw that. We watched that happen. Then
You say that they should have won that game.
27-0.
No, sorry, no, it was
He's
the
talking
playoff
about the
game. It was the playoff game. I got it
No,
mixed
early
up.
in the season, 27-0. Then they didn't look great against the Vikings in their second loss. They couldn't get over the hump against the Broncos, but the Broncos were flying high at that point.
Yeah.
Then you get to midway point of the season, and they lost to the Raiders by a touchdown, the Chargers by 8, and the Packers by 8 before falling to the Titans by a touchdown. Now, I know some of their wins were also close. Actually, all of their wins were close. They won by a touchdown, by 3,
They played
by
without a
5,
quarterback.
by 1, by 2, but they're doing all this all without a quarterback.
Right.
So if Deshaun Watson
And I
can
know-
do anything like he did at Clemson,
I know there's talk about Bill O'Brien's supposed to be the quarterback guy, all this stuff. None of the guys that were there are the guys he wanted there.
Right.
None of them.
he had Osweiler last year.
Right. He didn't want Osweiler. The GM, who O'Brien admittedly doesn't get along with, brought
Right.
Osweiler in. That's where that came from. So I think Deshaun Watson.
You think he gets the nod?
Absolutely.
I mean, he's the 12th
He
overall
has
pick
to.
in the draft.
You're telling me he's not better than whoever they have as the backup right now? The kid from Pitt?
Tom Savage?
Yeah, who can't remember anything because he has 18 concussions.
Brandon Whedon?
Exactly. Deshaun Watson could play with his opposite hand
I
and be
think
better than both
actually
of those
this
guys.
mirrors Penn State when O'Brien was there to a T because no one thought Hackenberg was going to start as a freshman.
Right.
So they're hyping up Tom Savage, and all of a sudden Deshaun Watson comes in to steal the show. I think that's a lot like what you saw with Penn State in 2012.
They keep talking about
2013,
Tom Savage.
2013.
They like what they see. They just need to... Yeah, but how many years do you have to like what you see until we want to see it now? Deshaun Watson is going to play. I don't know that it'll be week 1. I think it would be foolish not to. They start at the Jaguars? Yeah, start Deshaun Watson.
And then you have
so
the
you got
Bengals,
the Bengals
going
week,
downhill.
and then you got the Patriots,
Patriots
week 3.
again.
Yeah.
At Gillette again.
Okay, so maybe you wait till week 4 to start him, but but even there, okay. Or worst case scenario, Deshaun Watson starts week 6. You got the Browns at home, and then you go into the bye, and then you have Seattle coming out. I know that's crazy, but you have the bye to get ready for it. You know what I mean?
See, I think this is a team.
I start him
that's-
week 1.
They've won the division the last 2 years with nobody's at quarterback. With Brian Hoyer, Brock Osweiler, who else has played down there over the last few years? Brandon Whedon.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the thing. You're telling me Deshaun Watson can't go out there and hand the ball off 40 times a game and be as effective as Tom Savage or... We saw what those other guys could do, which was nothing.
Right,
right?
You're giving it to Lamar Miller, too. You're not giving it to some slouch.
Right. So we saw what those guys can do. Let the defense be the defense. Get some productivity and let the young guy learn. And then, okay, so it's a rocky start to the season. And you know what's happening by the time you get to the playoffs? Your rookie quarterback's ready to go. He has a full season under his belt. He's really ready to go. He's learned a lot under Bill O'Brien, who's a great coach for quarterbacks. I don't see any way how this team, and let's look at it the other way. And I know he's a rookie, but if you're a veteran on this team, you're telling me you're like, yeah, let's just pin it all on Tom Savage and Brandon Whedon this year. No,
you want the new hotness
because you want.
That is Deshaun Watson.
3 months from the beginning of the season when we're going into the playoffs. Yeah, we got Deshaun Watson.
He's ready to
He's
go
our Dak
now.
Prescott.
Yeah.
That's what they're thinking.
He's ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And like now I'm like, man, maybe I should have picked him at first.
No, I still think they're going to win 10 games.
I think they go win 10 games, and I think they lose the tiebreaker or maybe a game to the Titans.
It's not a statement about them.
But they went 9-7 last year without J.J. Watt.
You're right. And you know what? You know what got overlooked? And I have to give credit because I busted him at the time.
Yes, Clowney.
Yeah, Clowney. Yeah. He lived up to the hype last year. He really did. And so he earned that from me. Not that I busted on him, but I was in that boat where like, oh man,
Dude,
this is
come on,
it's starting to go.
Let's go.
But
now we did mention they lost Bowie, the cornerback.
Right.
To the Jags.
So I think that's a big loss.
They have some defensive deficiencies.
Okay,
so we don't overlook that.
Right. Does Will Fuller really step up this year, have a big second year? Because that could be huge. You know,
imagine Watson buying time in the backfield while Fuller's running his route.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of potential. There's going to be rocky times. There's going to be inconsistencies, but I think they're at least a 9-10 win team.
And I know there are some other issues. I like the Dante Foreman pickup. I know he's got some things he's got to sort through today.
Like now.
I know. I read the statement from his lawyer, and maybe I'm gullible.
Guns and weed, right?
I heard the gun was licensed and properly secured, and he's willing to take the drug test.
I know. I saw that too.
Now he might be downing cases of water right now, but I don't know. So that is a bad situation for him to get himself in. But I think in the end it'll end up working out okay for him. I like what they did. I think they're a 10-win team, so I think they improved from last year. I just don't think they improved the most in the division.
Yeah. Speaking of former players now coaching, Mike Rabel's a big one.
Wes Welker.
Larry Izzo. Right, Wes Welker. So, again, they're all over. They're all over the coaching staff now. It's fun to see. But, yeah, so Texans, Bill O'Brien's getting it done. Like, I know a lot of people want to rail against him because they're not winning a lot of games. We've won 9 the 3 years he's been there.
But look at what they've done. Look at who he's done that with. A great defense and no one on offense.
And look what he did at Penn State. The first 2 years when it all happened. Now, I know the roster sanctions hit harder more, but he had to deal with the aftermath, the beginning of everything. Right. And he won 8 games with Matt McGloin. 7 years with a freshman quarterback.
Matt McGloin, the Eagle, by the way.
That's true. So, 9 wins 3 years in a row, winning the division twice, making the playoffs the last 2 years, obviously. So, I think things are going up for Houston. I just think Tennessee also is working that step-by-step process after getting Mariota a few years ago, that I think they are going to give Houston a tough time, and I think ultimately that Tennessee actually will come out on top after tying with Houston last year, but not making the playoffs because of tiebreakers. I think the Titans leapfrog the Texans. Texans still fighting for a wild card. We'll get into who we think will get that in about a month or so. So, Tennessee. I put it all on because at this moment, I have to give the nod to Mariota over Watson. That's what it comes down to.
Yes, exactly.
That's what it comes down to.
Exactly, because I think they've improved a lot in all the other positions. So, even if we call it a wash in the other positions, and I really like Deshaun Watson, Mariota's been good. Until he broke his leg, he was really good. Mm-hmm. And I think you're going to continue to see him make improvements. And so at this point, I'm going to give him the nod over Deshaun Watson. I think if you're Houston, if you're looking, well, if Watson can be as good as Mariota, we're good. We're really good. I think that's kind of how you have to look at it right now. In the end, I think they project him. They think he'll be even better. But I think we've seen that Mariota is not a system organ quarterback. He's for real.
Yep.
And
he's gotten better each year, which is a great sign.
Right. And if he gets better again this year, look out. I think they get better.
They went 9-7 last year.
I'm going to put him at 11 wins.
Okay.
So I think it's really close with the Texans.
10-6. But I'm going to give them the tie, but I'm going to give them the tiebreaker this year. I don't know if it'll be head-to-head or if it'll be divisional record or whatever. I say 10-6. And what gives me a little bit of pause is, while every loss but one last year, so 6 of their 7 losses was 9 or less, a lot of their wins were tight as well. They beat the Lions by a point. They beat the Browns by 2. They beat the Bears by 6. They beat the Broncos by 3. They beat the Chiefs by 2. And they beat the Texans by a touchdown. So, not too many games were they winning by a comfortable, I'd say, 13, 14-point margin or more. But they lost a lot of close games. So if they can maintain that, some would call it luck. Others would just say that it's a good team of winning winning the close games and also converting a few that they just missed on.
Right.
They won 9 last year.
It'll
I
be
think they
interesting,
can win
though.
10.
They went 2-4 in the division last year.
Right.
So
that's
they've got to flip that, and I think they will. I think they get to 4-2 in the division.
And now, when did Mariota break his leg?
I don't remember.
It
was late, but I don't know when it was.
Let me see if we can figure this out. I want to see where here
season that is.
Against
so week
Jacksonville.
16. Yep.
Oh, well,
in a loss.
Well, and that was just going to say, did Mariota play the whole game? Because that's an ugly loss. Week 16, playoffs on the line because they tied with the Texans at 9-7. Jacksonville beats them on Christmas Eve. They rebounded and beat the Texans next week, but I don't think it mattered.
No, I think Houston knew.
Houston knew that even if they lost,
right, because they had the tiebreaker.
So that loss to Jacksonville was crippling. Now I know they lost Mariota. I don't remember what point of the game they lost him.
I feel like it was fairly early.
Giving
in the
up
game,
38 points to Jacksonville.
Right.
That's cause for concern right there. But I'm going to stick with the Titans. We need that overturn. Turnover in our predictions. So we're both going to go with Tennessee. This one could come back to bite us, but. Hey, you got to deal with that sometimes. Trying to think, did they do anything? Oh, they brought in Cyprian from the Jaguars. We talked about him already. Logan Ryan from the Patriots, defensive back, won a few Super Bowls there. One of the unheralded New England secondary players. He's a good addition for them. And Sylvester Williams from the Broncos, another defensive lineman. That was a nice addition for the Titans. But
I like the Corey Davis pick.
Oh, the number 5 overall, yeah.
To be a little transparent, I watched Western Michigan. I believe their conference championship game and their bowl game are the games I saw. And in there, you saw a lot of highlights of his from the season. The kid can play; he can fly. So that'll be interesting. Adoree Jackson. So he's
an interesting pick there.
Yeah.
We saw him kind of play as a slash player in college. He got hurt in the bowl game against Penn State. He was a difference maker there when he was healthy, though.
Yep.
And if he can play, develop into kind of a nickel dime cornerback, a specialty guy, but also a returner, that'll be a huge boom for the Titans. And want to take a look at their schedule. So they don't have. Ooh, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, they got a bit of a tough one. They finished second in the division, so they have a second-place team schedule. That could affect them a little bit. Open with the Raiders. Then they got to beat the Jags. You got to beat teams like that. Teams that you are probably better than on paper. You got to win those games.
Yep.
Before you get to welcome Seattle in, but Seahawks obviously not a pushover. Travel to Houston, possible playoff team. Travel to Miami, I hope a possible playoff team. They were last year. Colts, again, we're not quite sure, but
at home you have to beat that. You have to win that one.
At Cleveland, you definitely have to win that.
Then you come out, the Ravens, that's probably a game you have to win, especially because it's at home.
And back-to-back against Ravens and Bengals, both teams that have been trending.
Then you go to the Steelers, you probably lose that one. That's a primetime game in Pittsburgh.
And then you got Colts and Texans back-to-back on the road and at home.
Right, you got to win those two.
You got to go if they want to win the division, they got to go from 2-4 to 4-2.
Yep, yeah.
At worst.
Right.
So
you look at it how it ends, though. At Arizona, who knows what that is? At San Francisco, got to win that one.
You got to win that game.
Then you host the Rams and Jaguars to end.
So 3 teams, weeks 15, 16, and 17, as we're in the holidays, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, have to be guaranteed wins. They have to be chalk up 2-0. So, say after you beat San Francisco,
they could easily go 5-1 after the Steelers game, though.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So people may be counting them out after a loss at the Steelers.
They can't count themselves out.
They might be
know.
Right. They might be at 6 and 4 something at that point.
Yeah.
But they could easily end up 11-5 with that schedule. So we'll see.
So to recap, we're pretty much in agreement. Then we have the Jaguars in last or tied for last with the Colts, 6-10, 7-9. Colts 7-9 to 8-8. Then we have the Texans in second, but they go about 10-6, challenge for a wild card. Just miss out on the division title for a third straight year to the Titans, who I have them tying at 10-6, but winning on the tiebreaker, and you have them at 11-5. So there's our AFC South. So Titans and Bucks, 2 shows in a row for me. Flip some division winners. Hopefully that pans out for me, but I think we're looking at a fun race in the AFC South again.
Yeah, I think
Maybe a little bit better football each year. I know the Colts are the one that's really lacking there. Like, if the Colts would be better, that'd be a pretty strong division, especially now with the Texans having a young quarterback, the Titans almost entering the prime of Mariota.
Even if the Colts can hold steady in Jacksonville, raises the bar a little bit.
Luck, Mariota, Watson, and then if Bortles figures it out.
I'd love it. Well, not really, but it's fun when the teams are all pushing 500 or better, because then, it's not like, oh, there's a game that's just going to be a drag in this division. Nothing like that. So.
Right. All right. So, we actually do have an email here, so we're going to go to the May's Sandwich Shop email inbox and talk about, obviously, NFL here. This one's coming from my Uncle Rich in Massachusetts, and he has some things to say. So, all right. So this is Rich. Welcome back. I missed you guys. And as far as picks go, so far, once again, I agree more with Justin than with Joe. Falcons in the NFC South, Seahawks in the NFC West, and Raiders in the AFC West, which is, I believe, all three of your picks.
Yeah.
Not all that different than mine, because I picked Atlanta to challenge for maybe make a wild card, but I picked the Bucs. I did pick the Seahawks, and then I picked the Chiefs in the West. But I said that I expected the Raiders to challenge for a wild card, if not win it. Again, we haven't gotten into our wild cards yet. And he says, since tonight should be AFC South and the Jags. Wait, is he picking the Jags? Oh, he's saying the AFC South and the Jags. So I'm guessing he's not picking the Jaguars.
Right, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
He wants to let us know that he's going to be at the Patriots practice against the Jaguars on Monday, August 7th and Tuesday, August 8th before their first preseason game on Thursday night, August 10th. So he's going to get some practices in there. Feel free to get any and all autographs, even though we don't like the Patriots or we like the Jaguars.
Right. We don't like the Patriots, but
feel free to send them our way.
Right. We have started saying they're good. We just don't like it that they're good.
Actually, if you're going there and you will get autographs, I will send you our show shirt, and you can get our show shirt.
We should get him a football for Gronk to spike.
That's right. Yeah, we should just give him the helmet and tell him you can break it, but you have to record it. But you have to be recording breaking it.
He gives us a little intro clip.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, but you know what? I don't know that. Did we get? Yeah, we did get Chad and John to sign the shirt. They were the first ones to sign the shirt. Yeah, we took it to the park revitalization.
Yeah, when we moved like 100 yards of mulch.
Oh my gosh, that was so much mulch.
105
so much mulch. So my uncle continues, I will be wearing my Joe Mason J-Raff. I didn't read that. I'll be wearing my Joe Mason J-Raff shirt at the practices, so maybe Chad can come by and say hi. I will try to let him know that you will be there if there's some time to greet fans. So I'll tell him to look for the shirt. I got to figure out if it's gray or blue, though. We've had them on enough, it might be blue, but again, it could be the gray one. Again, the blue is the exclusive one. You only get that if you've been on the show or if you won a contest or something. He says, looking forward to tonight's show, but you do know Game of Thrones is on at 9. We do know that, and that's why we started earlier.
So, I had no idea why we started earlier. That gives you an idea where I'm at.
Priorities. Game of Thrones starts at 9, so we have to be done. But we're wrapping up here anyway.
At all.
So, you definitely don't want to start now because we're on season 7, so you will be completely lost.
Yeah, it's no desire to really see it. Not my thing. It's overrated.
Dude, well, here's the thing about this. We didn't watch the first season. We watched the first season right before the second season, and then we watched from there on out. Kelly read all the books. Actually, I got her the books, and she read them all. But the show is at the point, and it kind of was there last year, too, at some point where the show is now past where the books go, because George R.R. Martin takes like 10 years to write a book. He's not done with the next one. So everyone's been in the shadows since kind of last year, and now definitely we have no idea what's going on. There are theories out there, but no one knows for sure, so we're at that point now. But the show is so unique but brutal, both on screen and to you mentally. And if you get emotionally connected to anyone, this is not the show for you. And I've said this to multiple people, including fans like my wife and other people that we talk with. Greg and Laura really enjoy it. And I say, I will never watch Game of Thrones again, ever. Like, it's not something I'm rewatching. Like, when the season DVDs come out, Blu-rays, digital, whatever, I'm like, at the beginning I was like, oh, we love this show, we should get that. I'm like, am I ever gonna watch it again? No way am I putting myself through that because it's brutal. Like literally, the first 5 seasons were heartbreaking, and you're just like, how? Like you sit there, and it's not like I'm not gonna cry over it because it's not like that. There's very specific.
What people
things.
do.
Oh yeah, but there's very specific things in entertainment that can make me cry, and Kelly knows what they are. Well, I mean, it's real life events.
Right,
That's
right.
the kind of stuff that gets to me, not this fictional kind of stuff. But this like is so maddening. Like it's just like, oh my gosh, how? Like there's parts of season 3 that I wanted to rip my eyes out over frustration, and that's actually the point where I told Kelly to spoil it for me because I would feel more comfortable watching the show if I knew what was coming. Because what happens in season 3, I just pretty much threw, like, if I was holding papers, I just sort of thrown them up and walked away. And, yeah, so Game of Thrones does come back tonight at 9 o'clock on HBO, and that's where Kelly and I will be in 25 minutes. And Rich is watching now. He's hearing us discuss it. He says it's a gray shirt. So he missed the beginning of the show, so he's going to listen to it in the archive. But he does have one of the gray shirts. Right. So I'm going to if I can get the word out to Chad, I do think I can get in contact with him, but I will let him know that Rich will be there repping the show, and maybe he can weed his way through the crowd if the players have any kind of time to address the fans.
I should send him a Henny jersey, because that would be just awesome.
I have a Jags Henny jersey.
My parents have a Jags one. I have a Dolphins one.
Well,
that
of course,
work,
obviously I have Dolphins Jaguar stuff, or Dolphins Henny stuff too. But I actually have a Jags jersey for Henny before they changed into what they wear now.
I think that's what the one my parents
I have a white Henny Jaguars jersey. So, okay, well let's start to wrap this up. Thank you for the email, Rich. It's nice to hear from you and from anyone. We haven't gotten emails recently, probably because we've had downtime and the topics aren't always ones that everyone's interested in. But now we're back on football. We're halfway through our division predictions. So our 4 division champs, we talked about Falcons, Seahawks, Raiders, and Titans for you. I'm Buccaneers, Seahawks, Chiefs, and Titans. We got 4 more to go. I will be here next week doing a show. I don't know if I'll be by myself or not. It will be the NFC North, so we'll be talking Bears, Lions, Packers, Vikings. Then, once again, we're going to have another break, 2 weeks, no shows on the 30th and the 6th of August. But then when we come back on August 13th, from there to the Super Bowl, there shouldn't be too many shows missed. Obviously, the holidays are a different story,
right.
But we'll have a Joe Mays and J-Raff show or a Bulldog Hour every week from August 13th, basically to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it'll be hot and heavy. If you like to hear us talk about football, this is where to be. Absolutely. So, I think that's pretty much everything. Is there anything else you want to address since you haven't been here for about a month?
No.
I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to touch on,
No,
or
right now.
if there was anything you wanted to spouse about from 3 weeks ago when I did the lone show on the NFC South. Anything
No,
you
I
wanted
think I'm good.
Okay. Then we'll wrap things up. I always forget I want to move this business stuff to the beginning of the show, and I forget. So I will do that all now. For more of us, go to jmnjrradio.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at jmnjr_radio, at Joe Mays and J-Raff, at jmflyer with a Y, 1454, and at Mr_Raffoff. Birthday shout-outs. We're in mid-July.
I know of some coming up, but I don't know of any right now. So.
Well, I know before the next show I do will be Laura's, so happy birthday to Laura. And I know since you won't be here, happy early birthday to you.
Thank you. That's why July's the best sports month, right?
Yeah. How about those ESPYs? So Peyton Manning did kill it.
He
That
did.
was pretty good.
Did.
That was pretty good. I'm
They
sure
they were indoors.
so I'm sure we're forgetting some, and I'll try to remember to do that on next week's show. Again, episode 239 will be next Sunday, July 23rd, and I will be covering the NFC North, maybe with a guest, maybe not. We'll see. But I think that's everything. So thanks for joining us. This wraps up the 238th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Tune in every Sunday for the latest sports discussions from Joe and Justin. Each episode is available live
on Facebook Live
and can be downloaded or streamed on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can interact with Joe and Justin on Facebook and Twitter, and stay up to date with the guys at joemaysandjraff.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is part of the JMNJR Radio Network. For more info, visit jmnjrradio.com.